learners at the heart of what we're doing with it. It's, you know, evidence backed, and it's ultimately supporting organisations, it's supporting learners, it's supporting educators. So we're really excited about what might come out of this fund.
Hello and welcome to the Test Community Network weekly update. My name's Tim Burnett. This week we're talking about the UFI VocTech and NCFE Innovation Fund. This is for assessment projects. It's kind of largely based in the UK, but the only reason it's doing that is so that if they need to do some testing and they want an audience based within the UK, but it is kind of open to international organisations. And Dean's going to explain a bit more about that in a moment, so we'll get onto that in a few seconds. As ever, anything you see in this episode, you can go to the testcommunity.network for finding out more information. You can subscribe to the Test Community Network as well, and you get a lovely email once a week full of really juicy information coming from across the assessment sector. Reminders, we've got a webinar coming up on the 27th, so in 2 weeks' time. That's going to be about superpowers in research. It's getting really popular. There's a lot of people really interested in that. I'm going to do some deep dives into various assessment, well, I suppose research tools that you could use for your assessment activities. Some of them are kind of launch an assessment research project and have it done within 10 minutes. Others you can use to do some research while you sleep. Okay, and other webinar coming up. I've got 3 amazing guests that are coming on to look at the riding the AI wave. So we're going to be looking ahead at innovations and other conferences that are taking place, and just helping people kind of negotiate the hype and fear that is associated with AI and stay grounded really with your views on or your abilities in the assessment space and psychometrics. So I've got 3 brilliant psychometricians joining me for that. Other events taking place, so the 15th. We've got the AI in Education 25. That's a virtual conference. Cambridge Assessment, they were on last week. I've got a course, an online virtual course. So that's Assessment Data and Statistics, if you can say that. And I can't, clearly. The Council of Europe webinar, Europe Reference Framework, Evaluation of Education Technologies. There is some other, there's another one here. So European Education Development, Vocationally Training. They've got a webinar coming up, so policy scenarios, so it's worth checking that out. A lot of change going on in Europe, so effectively what they're doing is trying to consolidate their approach to vocational education so that people can all work together. Certification Network Group, amazing sessions that they run, both virtual and in person. They've got an in-person one coming up over in America. I think that one is Chicago. I don't know why I've not put the location on that one, but it might be Chicago, it might be Washington. Apologies for that. I'll check that out. In fact, I'll confirm that whilst after Dean's done his presentation. We have the Australian Evaluation Society. So if you're interested in all things down in Australia and New Zealand, then you can check that out. And then we've got some other resources coming up on the marketplace. Am I literate? So look at redefining literacy in the age of artificial intelligence. I need to read that one, I think. A report on the process over products, so mindsets inverting Bloom's taxonomy. So this was actually quite a popular topic at a couple of events that I went to. So I did a workshop for the E-Assessment Association's AO network group, where we looked at, I suppose, what we could do with AI within the assessment space. And I think out the back of that, there was some big messaging that I was kind of forming in my head as I was talking to people, is what you need to be doing is flipping your approach, and flipping the idea of, or inverting Bloom's taxonomy seems to be a good idea, and good idea to move forward with. I'll expand on that in an article, I think. Rethinking post-18 education, that's Stuart, I think, has put that article together for the FE News. We've got the educational duct tape, accessibility tools. It's worth checking that out. That's a podcast, so you can listen to that one. And Claire have got a conversation, Sunrise and Sunset, the media spotlight, the case study of regulation and communication. So it's worth having a look at that. So into my conversation now with Dean, and we talk about the fund that's available, the process that it goes through, and what they're trying to achieve with this amazing initiative. So here's me in conversation with Dean. Thank you very much for joining me. Are you well?
I'm well, thanks, Tim. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you very much. So we're going to talk about a fund, an assessment fund from NCFE. Do you want to just kind of very quickly tell us about yourself, about NCFE, just so anyone doesn't know about you, and then we'll tell me a bit more about the fund?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So hi everyone, I'm Dean Blewitt. I work at NCFE as the Senior Innovation Investments Manager within our Research and Innovation Directorate. A lot of my role is focused on testing new technology in the context of assessment, whether that be through the fund that we'll be speaking about today, or whether that's within some of our internal projects that we have in NCFE, which we call Sandbox Pilots. So really excited to share details of that today. In terms of NCFE, if you haven't came across us before, we're an awarding organisation specifically really focused within vocational and technical education. We've been around 175 years or so. You can find all about us online. But yeah, thanks, Tim.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So the fund launches on the 17th of February. Is that right? So just explain us, what it's there for, what you're trying to do, and how can people kind of apply for it.
Yeah, so the fund was originally set up back in 2021. It had the original purpose really of a bit like what I've described there to start off with. We've got lots of different innovations within the context of assessment, and the idea of the fund is a lot of organisations who are interested in these new ways of assessing learners need, grant funding, they need support, they need expertise to go ahead and actually test that. So we set the fund up back then with that ambition of really allowing different organisations to get out there and test their ideas in the real world with learners, with educators, find out, what works about the solution, what doesn't work about the solution. And ultimately, I think with the idea of that was to help us really influence policy, influence the advances in assessment. In terms of the Assessment Innovation Fund for this window, we're on to Window 7 now. It's going to be like the Super Bowl soon. I think we're going to have to go to Roman numerals. But we're on to Window 7. This is a strategic partnership between NCFE and UFI VocTech Trust. So both organisations really keen to see advances within assessment. Certainly, from both of us, we feel that technology has a big role to play in that. We've seen, with the pandemic, COVID-19, there's ways technology can make assessment fairer, it can make it more inclusive, it can help to make it more accessible and adaptive. And I think both of us as organisations really wanted to offer this fund and its grant funding of up to £125,000 to go ahead and allow organisations to test their ideas at scale. So specifically for this window, we're really looking for organizations and ideas where people want to really deploy it, really get it out there with up to 1,000 learners, get it tested in a really measurable way. And as I've said sort of earlier, that's the idea of this. We really want that robust evidence base at the end of it, where we can say, actually, this solution works because of X, Y, and Z. And actually, we should change the way that, awarding organizations like NCFE, educators, regulators, how they offer assessment in certain spaces. So really excited to see, what might come forward as part of the fund. So yeah.
Excellent. And so you said it was 125,000. Is that could be a single award to one organisation, or is that the entire fund itself?
So we've got enough funding to run 2 impact projects up to 125,000. So from the outset, that's ideally what you'd have. As you can imagine, though, with a grant process, it's hard to know what's out there until certain organisations apply. We have had it in previous windows where if we have had sort of one organisation take the bulk of it, and then there's 2 sort of minor ones that maybe only need actually 70,000 because they might have done some of that work. It might just be sort of finishing off the work, or it might just be taking it to a different segment. Then that's something we can explore as well as part of the process. But for us, as part of this window, ideally, we're looking for 2 projects up to that £125,000 mark.
Okay, and the window, how long is the window open for?
So it'll close on the 24th of March at 10 a.m. It's a 3-stage process, so it is almost the first stage for us. We call it the expression of interest. And the idea of that is, UFI and NCFE, we've done this a long time. NCFE have had grants since 2021, UFI a lot longer, and they've funded a lot more diverse sort of projects. For us, we've got an idea as to what we'd like to see. So things like personalization, things like the use of data, things like inclusivity, lifelong learning, and sustainability as well in assessment practices. They're sort of the core themes of what we'd like to see. ultimately that first stage is quite low input from an applicant perspective. So it's very much concentrating on, what's your idea and what impact you think it'll have, and just high level, how much do you think it'll cost and how many learners do you think you can impact as part of it. You don't need to know the nuts and bolts of how you're going to do it at that point. Certainly, should have considered that. We don't want applications who haven't thought about that. But certainly from an applicant perspective, it's more of a case of actually, does the idea fit with what we're looking for? So it's quite low time input. Once we've finished that first stage, we would then have a shortlist. We'd go out to stage 2. That's really where we get the details about, okay, we love the idea. How are you going to do that? How are you going to deliver this project? How's it going to work following the project as well? Because that's another important consideration of, okay, once you've tested it, where do we want to go afterwards? And, how do you want to influence things? What might happen after it? And that's a written application. And we go to a much smaller team of evaluators as well. So you get a lot more feedback, you get a lot more guidance at that point. And then stage 3, what we do is it's really a chance for the applicants to meet us at NCFE and our wider evaluators, and also for our evaluators and NCFE to meet the applicants as well. And that's just an open conversation about what the idea is, pretty much running through what's in that written application, but bringing it to life. And then essentially an open forum to chat both ways on that. So if you've got specific questions for us about how that grant might work or how we might work together following it, it's a great opportunity at that stage to really talk about those sort of conversations as well.
And who can apply then in terms of organisation size? Could a single person working alone apply, or does it have to be a business of certain size? Do you have to be an educational institution? Do you have to have connections with an institution? What's the kind of requirement there?
So from us, actually, it's just as long as you're an organisation. So yeah, individual, Dean Blewitt, I couldn't apply. If I've got an organisation though, and I'm registered, then absolutely, that's up for grabs. We don't sort of cap on size, so you don't we understand it's a challenge. I think particularly when we talk about evidence backed, that actually that's a challenge that startups face, so small organizations, but also your large corporates. If you're a startup, I think there's a lot of focus on scaling and making sure actually you're getting customers and you're getting out there. If you're a corporate, there's that pressure on in terms of staying ahead of competitors, keeping business. And I think the idea of this is we take some of those pressures away with the funding and saying, actually, let's focus on what matters. What impact is this having on the learner? And ultimately, what does it mean? What can we do with it? We do say in terms of the application process for for-profits, obviously it's a grant, NCFE or a charity, UFI or a charity. For profit organisations, we do look for some match funding there as well. And the idea of that is it shows that equal commitment to the cause there. Again, we don't put any stipulations on, if you've got over 500 employees, it needs to be this much. Instead, it's more around actually, what are you investing time-wise? Because that's something that often goes unseen in grants as well. There's obviously a vested interest from the organisation applying, and they've often done a lot of groundwork either in the past or during the project that sometimes goes unseen. So it's really just being transparent about that sort of commitment there both ways. We are looking specifically for this fund for it to be focused on vocational and technical education in the UK. So post-16 learners, focused on that space. If you're based outside of the UK, that's fine, but the project needs to be based within the UK, really testing it out for that UK market and UK learners, because ultimately that's where we want to go in the future. We want to influence change in assessment practices within UK education.
Yeah. Okay. So if an international organisation's watching this, they could apply if they've got partnerships and relationships internal within the UK to do that. Excellent. Okay.
Absolutely. And that's a key thing as well. Like if often we don't have an application from sort of an individual organisation as well. Often they might need to bring in partners, collaborators as well. It's quite difficult sometimes to put these projects together, whether that be, you want to bring in an evaluation team from a university to give it that extra validation. We've seen all sorts of ideas like that in the past. And again, we welcome that. So, being upfront and honest, if you don't have the specialist skills in a certain function of the project, it's absolutely fine to draw on that support from elsewhere as well.
Yeah, excellent. And what kind of projects have won it in the past then? Because you said this is year 7. So can you give us some examples of projects?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So, I mean, we've had 12 projects to date. We've had about 3,000 learners that have taken part in, I think, over 200 educators. So it has been quite widespread. Everything that we do in this space, so I'll pick on a few, but I feel a bit harsh on that. There's 12 of them. But everything that we do is available online. So literally, if you type in AIF NCFE projects, you'll see all of our projects. You'll get
and
a video on them.
We'll put that link in the notes. Yeah,
that'd be really good. But we've had give a flavour of it, we've dibbled and dabbled in, say, immersive technologies. So we had 2 projects, Calderdale College, Sheffield College, and both apply for funding with regards to VR and the use of that in 2 different user cases. So Sheffield, we're using it very much to supplement, I guess, a live experiment or event. So I don't know, example I think Steve used was sort of, you've got a Dover sole, you're preparing that as part of a catering qualification. You might
That's
get one
fish,
opportunity.
isn't it? For anyone who doesn't know what Dover sole is, it's a fish. Yeah, go on. Sorry, go on.
No, it's quite an expensive fish actually, which is why they only get one opportunity of sort of preparing that.
Yeah.
And the idea of this was, VR could actually facilitate multiple attempts at it, so you don't feel as if it's that one-off sort of learning experience. Actually, you can dip back into that and try the scenario again. And Calderdale College had a very different viewpoint on this from sort of health and social care, and very much health and social care. It's really person-centered, but actually, some of those interactions could be high stakes. So even when you've got an actor playing a patient, or you visiting an actual patient, that can be quite a high stakes form of assessment. The idea of with the VR was it provides that sort of low stakes, really supportive environment that actually learners can practice again and again and get immediate feedback on sort of how they're doing in those situations before building up to those higher stakes maybe events there. So immersion's been a core theme. We've obviously done a lot with AI more recently as well. So whether that be automated feedback that we did with Progress A, whether that's the use of data as well with Pupil Progress that we did. We've had a real variety of projects, and again, for any international organisations out there as well, we did a quite interesting pilot with digital credentials. And actually, this project was based in Australia. So again, for this window, we're looking for UK, but there was lots of parallels with Australia in terms of education system. And they experimented of how we move away from actually giving grades to learners. So very much, there's a lot of research out there that suggests once you give someone a grade, they don't look at the feedback. It's just all about the grade. That's all they can concentrate on. They did a lot with digital badges and credentials of actually how can you move learners away from that. So could badges be a way of, instead of getting an A, I don't know, you've got 3 gold badges, you've got 2 silver, you've got 1 bronze, trying to use that almost game and experience of being like, okay, well, how can you game to the next level? How do you get more silver? How do you get more gold? And having learners focus on improving assessments in sort of that methodology, which was again really, really interesting because it was very different to how we normally approach these types of things.
Excellent. So real variety there. Great that you gave 2 Yorkshire examples as well. I'm a Yorkshireman, so that's really good. Excellent. So just one. So in terms of the technology you develop, who owns the IP then? If you've received a grant fund, because that would probably be a big question on a lot of people's minds.
Yeah, no, it's a really valid question. I mean, we've worked with all sorts of different organizations in the past. Fundamentally, IP will sit with the applicant. Specifically for this window as well, I think we're really focused on, deployability rather than development. So it should make that conversation obviously a lot easier, because if there's not so much development, then there's hopefully no grant funding really being used in a significant way for that. But ultimately for us, that would remain with the organisation who's sort of introduced the technology. NCFE and UFI's role in this is really that idea of creating that evidence base. And having those robust, measurable impacts demonstrated. And what we want to do with those is advocate for that change. And ultimately, hopefully that will lead to, a better assessment system for both learners, employers, and regulators and policymakers as well.
Excellent. And have you seen an increase in AI submissions, AI-based project submissions over the last 2 years then?
We have, yeah. So there's definitely been an increase in AI-based ones. apps, and that's for obvious reasons with,
Yeah.
LLMs becoming way more accessible. We'd still encourage that. We've got a specific principle there around data. It is one of those where actually I think that opening of LLMs and, that type of technology advance and just how accessible it is really, really, we expect to see a large influx of those. But equally on that, there's lots of sustainability factors at play with the introduction of AI, and we're keen to see actually, that we consider that aspect of things as well.
Yeah, I think it's a forgotten item, isn't it, on the technology agenda? People think, oh yeah, it's fine, but was it for generating an image? It's a bottle of water. No, it's a charge of a mobile phone, isn't it? Equivalent in terms of data and things like that. So they are very power hungry devices, aren't they? So yeah, take a lot of CPU to kind of run them. Well, that's brilliant. So people go to NCFE website for more information, and we'll put the link in here. Any kind of top tips for advice for people?
Yeah, top tips, try and really keep it simple. We get a large range of ideas, as you can imagine. We don't work specifically in every single sector, so try and keep the idea simple in terms of what's your problem, how does your solution impact that, and ultimately, how does it impact learners? So for the first stage, that's definitely the key to it. If anyone's interested in finding out more or chatting live to us, we do have a number of workshops as well that we'll be running. We've got one on the 19th of February, one on the 4th of March. You can come along there. You can ask the team live as well. So we'll do minor little breakout sessions where you'll get some time with members of the team. If you've got questions on things like IP, whether you're eligible, any of those sort of initial scope and questions that you might have, they're a great chance just to come and chat with someone live, rather than maybe trying to get through all the documentation that we've got available.
Yeah, it can be daunting, can't it? But that's brilliant. Well, what I'll do is I've got the event for launching the fund in the Test Community Network calendar. I'll add in those workshops as well, and as well, so people can see that, and obviously people can see more information on the fund. But thank you very much, Dean. That was a really comprehensive review, and it's quite an exciting project, isn't it? I bet you quite enjoy working on this, don't you?
Oh, it's brilliant, to be fair. It's yeah, I mean, I used to be a teacher, and it's amazing to see all the different possibilities that are there, and that we're doing it in the right way as well. Learners at the heart of what we're doing with it. It's evidence backed, and it's ultimately supporting organisations, it's supporting learners, it's supporting educators. So we're really excited about what might come out of this fund.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Dean, and we look forward to hearing more about the submissions. And when might we hear the results? When might they be announced from this round?
So we're hoping to keep everyone up to date as we move through. Obviously, it'll be sort of organisations' discretion as well whether they want to notify people that are in the fund. But ultimately, we should have the winners by around about July time. Hopefully launching those projects sort of in August, September, which is start of the academic calendar. It's a great time to get learners involved in it.
Brilliant. Well, we'll look forward to hearing more information. I'll share it as it comes out as well, so keep us in touch. But thank you very much, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you, Dean.
Thanks, Tim.
Yes, thank you very much, Dean. That was excellent. Really interesting insight there into the fund. There's been some great ideas in the past, and I just hope it's going to continue to fund some amazing ideas in the future. I will put those dates in the show notes, so you've got for the workshops. So if you want to go along and chat with the team, Dean and Rebecca and the team, just to find a bit more information about them, then you can please do that. As you're here, you've made it this far. Thank you very much for sticking with me. I've got a couple of quick insights for you. So, dates for your diary. So there's the AO Forum coming up at the end of April. And it's going to be a fascinating conference. Some really great speakers. I know Ben's going to come on. So Ben Smith from Gordon Associates, the organisation that organises it, is going to come and tell us a bit more about that soon. So look out for that. There's also been an announcement for the FAB conference. For anyone who kind of markets or works and operates within the UK space, particularly, the FAB Conference Awards is a great event. Last year they were talking about splitting up the awards from the conference, which I think most people said was a bit of a bad idea, just because the awards is a big draw for getting people along. But I know they were squeezed in space at Leicester, so they have announced that they are moving the conference. It will now be the 27th to the 28th of November in Milton Keynes at the Doubletree Hilton in Milton Keynes. So an amazing event. Hopefully they've got a bit more space to grow because it's a really growing event there. The other one I just want to quickly mention is ATP Global have these coffee chat sessions where they invite regular guests along, and that's going to be taking place on the 25th of February. It's going to be a very busy week, so I've got 2 webinars that week, but I am going to be a guest on that webinar along with Andrew from the marketing team, the kind of marketing committee, so check that out. There'll be more information there as well. But yeah, please do come along to that. It's going to be a fascinating chat. So that's it from me this week. I hope you have a fantastic week. Look out for some updates from me regarding the activities I've been involved in this week. Some quite interesting insights from the RM event that I went to yesterday and the EAA event to earlier in the week. But otherwise, fantastic week. And if you've got a half-term works week, enjoy your holiday. Take care and bye-bye.